It started as something ordinary, just a teenager trying to fix his Wi-Fi at home. But in America, even the most innocent actions can be twisted into suspicion when you're young, black, and simply existing. Within minutes, what should have been a quiet afternoon turned into flashing lights, a swarm of officers, and a call that never should have been made. All because one woman dialed 911. But what the police discovered when they arrived wasn't just shocking, it revealed something far deeper. So what really happened that day? It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon. 16-year-old Marcus lived in a modest neighborhood where families kept to themselves, where kids rode bikes down cracked sidewalks, and where life, at least on the surface, seemed ordinary. He wasn't out on the streets. He wasn't causing trouble. He was at home. Where every teenager should feel safe, Marcus was a tech-savvy kid, the kind who loved tinkering with gadgets and helping neighbors when their devices glitched. That day, his Wi-Fi kept dropping, cutting off his online homework and music. Frustrated, but determined, he stepped outside to reset the connection. Crouching near the side of his house where the router cables ran. To him it was nothing unusual, just part of his everyday life. But outside his bubble of focus, another story was taking shape. A woman driving by slowed her car, eyes narrowing as she spotted him. To her, Marcus wasn't a kid fixing his Wi-Fi, he was suspicious. She didn't see his school books inside, his sneakers kicked off by the door, or the posters of his favorite athletes covering his bedroom wall. She only saw what she wanted to see, and in that single moment, with a phone in her hand and furor, something darker in her voice, she set into motion a chain of events that Marcus never could have imagined. Marcus didn't notice the car idling at the corner, or the woman's voice as she whispered into her phone. He was focused on the tangled cords at his side gate, unaware that his ordinary act of fixing the Wi-Fi had just been recast as something criminal. Across the neighborhood, a police dispatcher's voice cut through radios. Possible break-in in progress. Suspect is a black male, mid-teens, near a residence. Within minutes, flashing lights tore through the quiet street. Marcus straightened up when he heard the sirens, confused at first, then startled as two squad cars screeched to a stop in front of his home. Doors slammed. Boots hit the pavement. Shouts filled the air. Hands where we can see them. Marcus froze. His heart pounded so hard he could barely breathe. This was his home, his yard. Yet suddenly he was no longer a teenager, with homework waiting inside. In their eyes, he was a suspect. Neighbors peeked through curtains. House phones began recording. And Marcus, standing in his own driveway, realized that one wrong movement could turn this misunderstanding into something irreversible. The officers fanned out, weapons at their sides, voices sharp with authority. One barked questions before Marcus could even find words to answer. What was he doing? Why was he there? Did he live here? His explanations stumbled out, swallowed by their suspicion. Then the woman appeared. The same Karen who had called 911 stood across the street, arms folded, nodding as if to confirm the story she had invented. To her, Marcus wasn't a kid she'd seen walking to school, wasn't the boy who waved at the mailman every morning. He was a threat. And her word, her assumption, carried enough weight to put his life on the line. Marcus tried to point toward the front door, toward the photos hanging in the living room, the mail with his family's name on it, the proof that he belonged there. But hesitation hung in the air, each second stretching longer, each command louder than the last. A neighbor stepped out onto their porch, shouting that Marcus was telling the truth, that he lived there. For a flicker of a moment, doubt crossed one officer's face. But another snapped back, insisting they secure the scene. And in that moment, Marcus realized the terrifying reality. It didn't matter that this was his house, his Wi-Fi, his life. It mattered only that someone had decided he didn't belong. The tension grew unbearable, the kind of silence that crackles before it breaks. Marcus lifted his hands higher, praying that compliance would keep him safe. But as the officers moved closer, the question remained, would the truth be enough? Or had the damage already been done? The air was electric with tension. Marcus stood frozen in his own driveway, arms raised high, the late afternoon sun beating down on his trembling hands. He wanted to scream that he lived here, that this was his home, but every word felt dangerous, every breath heavy with risk. One officer stepped closer, his voice sharp, his hand grazing the weapon at his side. "Don't move." The command wasn't a warning, it was a threat hanging in the air like a blade. Marcus's knees shook, but he didn't dare shift an inch. Behind him, the front door cracked open. "Ow!" His mother's voice broke the silence, panicked and desperate. "That's my son, this is our house." For a moment, time seemed to stop. Neighbors shouted from porches, cell phones lifted higher, recording every second. The officers didn't back down. The narrative had already been written in their minds. A young black male, possible intruder. Danger first, truth second. Marcus's chest tightened. He thought of the stories he'd seen on the news, the names spoken in protests, the lives. Cut short, he wondered if he would be next. In that split second, the weight of history bore down on him, not just his own life, but the countless others who had stood in his place. And then, one officer demanded proof ID, mail, anything. Mother rushed inside, returning with a stack of envelopes, photos, the undeniable evidence that this was their home. Still, hesitation lingered, suspicion refusing to fade. Marcus stood there, humiliated, afraid, and painfully aware that survival itself was a fragile gift. And as the tension broke, one chilling truth remained. Even in your own home, even with innocence on your side, one phone call can turn your life into a battlefield. Eventually, the officers lowered their tone. With evidence in their hands and no crime to charge, they backed away, muttering something about a misunderstanding. But for Marcus, nothing about this was a misunderstanding. He had been treated like a criminal in his own yard, his innocence questioned, his safety threatened, all because someone refused to see him as a kid fixing his Wi-Fi. That night, Marcus sat quietly in his room, the hum of his computer finally connected to the internet again. But the silence was different now. He couldn't shake the image of guns pointed his way, the sound of commands echoing in his ears. A simple task had left him with a memory he would never forget. For his mother, the incident was a cruel reminder of what she already knew. No matter how careful, respectful, or ordinary her son tried to be, he could still be one phone call away from danger. And for the neighbors who watched, it became another chapter in a story America has told too many times, a story of suspicion, fear, and lives nearly cut short by bias. This wasn't about Wi-Fi. It wasn't about a call gone wrong. It was about the reality that, for many black families, safety at home is not guaranteed, not even on your own doorstep. Marcus survived that day. But how many others haven't? How many names do we remember, and how many have been forgotten? And the question that lingers, the one we can't afford to ignore, is this: how many more calls? How many more lives before the world finally decides that enough is enough?